Hello and welcome to West Country Wanderings. Welcome to something a little bit different. It's one of my railway series, but not as you know it. Well, where are we first of all? I'm in the county of South Gloucestershire, just and not far from the Cotswold town of Wootton-on-the-Edge, somewhere we visited on the Cotswold Way. Now, close to where I'm currently sat is the village of Charfield. Well, I'm actually in the parish of Charfield. I'm in Old Charfield or Higher Charfield. I'm in the churchyard at Church End. I'll insert map now so it all makes sense. And just down below the hill there is Charfield proper. Grew up around the Midland Railway line, and there used to be a station there. It's a busy line between Gloucester and Bristol, lots of trains that fly through it. However, there was an incident that happened there, and over in the corner of the churchyard is the result of that incident that happened. Now, some of you may be familiar with this story, and there is a little bit of an oddity to what I'm about to tell you now and how I came about it. This literally just hasn't been ripped off Wikipedia or some blog that I found on the internet or some other YouTuber. How this came to me was I bought a book about a year ago from a second-hand bookshop. I think it was about canals, but it doesn't matter what it was about. Inside that book, somebody had made a cutting about this particular incident. In fact, it was in Saga magazine, of all things. And I was aware of the incident. My mum and dad were aware of the incident. In fact, a YouTube colleague called Ron from Parkinson's Walks actually made a video about this some 3 years ago. Now, I've watched that video and a couple of others, but reading this article, some new information came to light, which I don't think is in the public domain on YouTube, or rather the internet, shall I say. Now, when that article was published, the internet wasn't generally available, and particularly things like Google and Bing search. And all that will become clear towards the end of today's video, because there is a mystery associated with what happened back there at Charfield Station, which I'll tell you about in a moment. But perhaps I have managed to solve a little bit of the mystery. Watch on and all will be revealed. In October of 1928, one Trevor Goscombe of Grimes and Goscombe, a local undertakers, buried the dead here in this churchyard at Church End in the parish of Charfield. However, not all of the bodies were accounted for. If you have a look at the marker here, it says "to unknown," which is quite an unusual thing to see. You'll also notice something very odd about the gravestone marker. One is it was built by the London, Midland and Scottish Railway Company, and two, it's a mass grave. The people that are buried there aren't related to each other apart from one thing: they happened to have travelled on the same train. At 4:28 a.m. on Saturday, October the 13th, 1928, the train going from Leeds to Bristol, which was a mixed freight train. It was a mail train, but it also had passenger coaches, passed close to Charfield Railway Station. Now, when it got to the bridge, which is still standing there, it hit and collided with a goods train, a GWR goods train, which was moving in the siding at Charfield Station. Unfortunately, that collision caused another major disaster. Because it hit that goods train, it then derailed. And because it became derailed, it hit a freight train coming fast in the opposite direction, heading north from Bristol towards Gloucester. Another LMS train, but this time a freight train. There was a big explosion, but much worse than that. The explosion and the bang caused the gas lamps in the carriages to ignite, causing an absolute inferno and lots of burning and carnage to the unfortunate passengers that happened to be travelling on that train. So what had caused such an incident? If the goods train, the GWR goods train, was manoeuvring from the loop or the siding at Charfield station onto the main line, it meant that the line was blocked in that direction. And of course, if it was blocked, why was the signal saying clear? Well, there's a bit of an oddity around that and a bit controversial. The driver and the fireman, on oath to the coroner, said that they had a clear distance signal. And because it was clear on the distance signal, it meant they could pass through it. However, the distance signal was checked and it was shown to be working absolutely correctly. And various other checks showed it was at red or probably at red. The driver and fireman were actually charged with manslaughter for the deaths of those unfortunate passengers. But they were later acquitted. I'm not sure why, probably due to lack of evidence, but that's it goes. But that's not the heart of our story. Now remember, we have those unfortunate passengers which were travelling from various destinations, both from the Midlands, because they were coming down from Leeds and the north of Yorkshire, heading down to Bristol, the southwest, and some were returning. I think some were from Tor Point, which is obviously in Cornwall. Remember Cornwall, that's going to come up in our story towards the end. So you have those passengers on there, and as I say, a lot of them lost their lives. They were so badly burned they couldn't be identified, hence the mass grave. Because they knew, or various relatives knew they were travelling on the train, they got the names for them. But they couldn't be sure who was what, because obviously, well, without going into too much detail, you can imagine with the horrific inferno because of the gas lamps on the carriages. However, it still says that there were two unknown. Who were the two unknown? Well, they were actually children. But why do we know that they were children? Because everybody else was accounted for. Nobody reported any children missing. No parent, no guardian, no school came forward to say, where's our children travelling on this train? In fact, it was quite unusual for children to be travelling alone during those days anyway. But it's still all rather odd. Now we know these two unknowns were travelling on the train. In fact, we have an eyewitness. We have actually two eyewitnesses, and I'll come on to that in a moment. There was a porter called Haynes. Unfortunately, we don't know his first name. But he was recognised by the coroner as having an extremely good memory because of other matters relating to the incident. Now, for some reason, he was checking tickets, train tickets on the station, or rather the train, should I say. I'm not sure why a porter would be checking train tickets of passengers, but there we go. Perhaps it was because it was a mail train as well as being an LMS passenger train as well. But he distinctly remembers seeing two children, in fact, two school children at Gloucester station. The train had stopped at Gloucester and he was still going round checking those tickets. One of the children was a girl aged between 8 and 10 years old. She had a school uniform on with a blue jacket, a Royal Air Force blue jacket, serge jacket, with an emblem on it. And I'll come back to that emblem because that's a really important part of our story. And she was with a young lad, who was probably around the ages between 10 and 11 years. So we definitely have two children travelling on the train. Now the mystery is, when they had the bodies and the charred remains, unfortunately, of those bodies, nothing was discovered of any child or children. So it's a bit of strange. What happened to those children? They could have been, of course, burnt beyond recognition, and because there was obviously a mix-up with all the other bodies that were disformed because of that serious inferno, we just don't know. So perhaps they were on the train. However, nobody knows who the children were, where they were coming from or where they were going to. Perhaps until now. Now we have another eyewitness, a police sergeant Crook, and he had a black book, probably similar to this one that I've got my notebook from my script here today, and he noted the following: that part of a school blazer had been found amongst the wreckage, a size to fit a boy or a girl aged between 8 and 10 years old. It was Air Force blue in colour, with a badge that said the following in Latin: Luce Magistra. Now that translates as by light mistress. So it's highly likely that that jacket belonged to a school. There were other finds too, a child shoe and a child kid's leather gloves. Now the LMS, bearing in mind there was no Facebook in those days, there was no mass media, they couldn't go on to Sky News or BBC, ITV and put an announcement about it. But they did try their best to contact schools and see which ones had an emblem saying Luce Magistra. But nobody came forward, it could not be found, and it remained a complete mystery. At the first anniversary of the rail crash in October of 1929, a woman was seen here, dressed all in black, laying flowers on this mass grave here in the corner of the churchyard at Church End in Charfield. But nobody knew who she was. In those days, of course, villages were close-knit communities and people tended to know who other people were. And some of the regular relatives of the people that died on that train were known to the villagers. They would come and leave flowers regularly as best as they could, bearing in mind a lot of them lived some distance away. So this remained a mystery. This woman would arrive in black and she would appear here laying flowers every October each year. Now the media got to hear about this story about these two children were completely unidentified. And a journalist decided to come here to Charfield, right here, and approach this woman, to come up to her and ask her who she was and who she was laying the flowers on behalf of. As soon as she saw the man arriving with this reporter's notebook, she sussed he was a journalist. She fled from the churchyard and she was never ever seen again. Now, this is when our story takes a little bit of a different turn, and one that only happened today. Now, I don't normally do original research on any of my videos. I'm normally just looking into the history books, the guidebooks, what information I can glean from maps, old maps, Wikipedia, all that sort of thing, using lots of different sources to bring the videos to you. However, this is the first time I've actually done an original piece of research. I was looking back at that article and it crossed my mind, Luce Magistre, Luce Magistre. Now that article was written around 30 years ago, so we're looking around the mid-1990s, perhaps a little bit earlier. I don't know the exact date it was published. At that time we didn't have, like I've got in my pocket here, a mobile phone. Less home computing, didn't have laptops, tablets, that sort of thing. We certainly didn't have Google or Bing. So anybody reading that article, indeed the journalist himself writing it from the source, in fact he actually spoke to the son of the undertaker that buried the people in this churchyard. So he went that far, but I would imagine the gentleman has now passed away because he was 75 when he was interviewed. Now when the journalist writing that saga article was doing so, he wouldn't probably have had access to the internet. There was a little bit of internet in the 1990s, I'm aware of that, but it was very embryonic. It was mainly universities talking to each other and various government departments. It wasn't mainly public, and certainly schools didn't have their own website. You see where I'm coming from? So it crossed my mind, had anyone simply put in Lycée Magistrate into an internet search engine to see if it comes up with a school? Well, yes, I did. I put in Lycée Magistrate. In fact, what I put in was Lycée Magistrate School Uniform, England, because I thought probably they'll be from an English school. Could have been Welsh, but I thought we'd try it with England first, just to narrow it down. One school came out. In fact, other schools did come up, but only one in England. One that is quite likely for those children to have been returning to, or one of the children actually, because one of the schools is an all-girls school, and it's Truro's School for Girls, yes, in Cornwall, which kind of fits in. I couldn't find another school with the same emblem. In fact, the school has been going since 1880, and as far as I'm able to ascertain, it's had the same uniform since that time. Now, could it have been that this child, one of the children, was a school child that was attending or returning to the city of Truro in Cornwall to return to their studies? Bear in mind, it was a Saturday, so perhaps school was going to start on the Monday. It was quite possibly half term in October as well. I don't know for certain. This is all conjecture, I know, but I thought I would try, and I have identified that school that emblem comes from. I don't know where the boy was returning from. As I say, he was a school. He may have been going to, there is another public school for boys in Truro as well. So he may have been going there. I honestly don't know. And could it be because he was heading to Bristol, would then been going on to picking up a train heading to Cornwall? Quite likely. It said there were other passengers on that train returning to Cornwall, specifically Tor Point, as you can see from the gravestone. So that seems quite likely. I don't know for certain, but it was that school. However, what I intend to do over the next couple of days is to get an email to that school and just contact them just to see if it's possible, if they've any records to make any connection to a missing school pupil that they had in 1928 that could have been involved in a rail tragedy here in Charfield in South Gloucestershire. Now, I will keep you updated on that, so if I do get a reply back from the school, you'll find it in my next monthly vlog, which will probably be towards the end of the next week, just before the end of August. So a little bit of a mystery for you here on West Country Wanderings, but is it a mystery that has been partially solved? I don't know, but I will certainly let you know on the channel through my monthly vlogs and also on my Facebook group. If you go onto Facebook, put in West Country Wandering, you'll see I have a Facebook group. There's about 290 people that have joined that so far, and in that you can share your own video clips and photographs of any sort of place in and around the wider West Country, anywhere from Worcestershire right down to the tip of Cornwall and across to Dorset. So you're welcome to do that. Also, if you have your own theories, you're welcome to put them on there or in the comment section of this video below. Lots of theories have been done over the years regarding these two missing children or unidentified children. Were they ventriloquists, dummies? Were they jockeys and like really short? Were they dwarfs? Yes, all kinds of weird and wonderful things. I don't think there's any truth in any of those, and I do think they were school children that simply we haven't as yet been unable to identify for whatever reason. How the woman in black ties in there, well, that may or may not have anything bearing on it at all. She may have been laying the flowers for another relative that passed away and just didn't want any association. She might have been having an affair with somebody that lost their life on the train. Who knows? We really don't know. She may have known those children. She may not have done. Don't know. That could be a complete, blind side to it. But I do think there is something in that jacket and the emblem on that jacket and the identification of where that girl was going to school, and it should be able to link that through to who the boy was as well. Thank you very much for watching one a little bit different in my railway series today. Not much of railways, just a few clips of Charfield Station. Oh, incidentally, Charfield Station is planned to be reopened because we're in a kind of a commuter area for both Bristol and Gloucester and Cheltenham in this area. And Charfield has built up a lot over the years, so it's possible that the station may open here in a few years' time. And if it does so, then I'll bring that to you in another railway series video. Thanks for watching. Hope to see you on the channel again soon. All the best for now. Bye bye.